Thank you for joining. I wasn't ready for that. But hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have you be part of our conversation. I'm Naveen Khalil. I'm the Diversity Career Specialist at Penn State Harrisburg. Fun fact, today actually marks my 1 year of being with Penn State Harrisburg. So that's pretty
why
cool.
we did it today. We're really celebrating her time here at Penn State Harrisburg.
But yeah.
And I have the honor and privilege of working with Naveen here at Penn State Harrisburg. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Although it's a very dreary day, we don't have the cool backdrops because our camera didn't want to play well with us. It's a beautiful rainy day in Harrisburg. My name is Michelle Weber Colon. I am the Associate Director of Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as student engagement here. So my role with our first-gen students here at Penn State Harrisburg has really led for this passion and interest. We hope that this is an opportunity for all of us to be able to connect. We want this to be an active time. We are very energetic females who want you to come out of this session like, yeah, that really meant something and I was interacting. So does that describe us?
Yes, she nailed it.
Okay. So with that said, I hope that everyone is doing great today. We are going to be using the chat and the Q&A in Whova, but we don't want to give you any surprises. So you should see a screen on what to expect. Naveen?
Yes. So here are a little bit of what we are hoping that you guys could, what we're going to be talking about today. So we are going to look at some learning objectives, obstacles facing first-gen students, dive in a little bit on who is the first-gen immigrant student, as well as what are challenges of being a child of an immigrant. And then I have a few student quotes that we would like to talk about, and then also discuss on how to help. This is just a brief of what we're going to talk. We were going to ask, what would you,
I got it.
Go ahead.
I got this part. Okay, so the first question that we want to engage you in is truly a Penn State question. Why not? Since we are all part of this wonderful network. Do we have, and I'm going to look at the chat here in Whova, do we have any Penn State alums here? Because I can date myself and tell you, I do think we have, I saw a thumbs up. If you are in the Whova chat, I do see any don't worry, if you're not a Penn State alum, I'm proud. I have a Kelly, I have a Deborah. Are you a Penn State alum?
I'm not a Penn State alum.
She is not a Penn State alum, but that was the first question that she wanted to ask.
Yes.
I am. Class of 99. Okay, crickets. There we go. But most importantly, and the reason why we're here, who identifies here and within this chat as a first-gen student? Do we have any first-gen student? Look at that.
I know, I'm looking at the chat too. I was like, let me pull it up.
Thank you, Nicole.
Oh my gosh.
We have one. We are so happy that you're joining us. Hi, Lauren. Just made me blush, Lauren. So it is wonderful to truly have your voice and presence here, because you are at the forefront of being and leading a legacy of which we truly want to see for our students here at Penn State. So we thank you for being here today. And with that, we want to take you over to the teacher and me, the professor, our learning objectives. So we truly hope that by the end of your time here, we're able to identify barriers that impact the first-gen student experience. As said in our title, being a first-gen child of an immigrant is the one that we want to focus on, but that's one of many, many barriers. Also define the complexities. As our keynote speaker mentioned this morning, it is very important to identify, what is at the intersection of being a first-gen student. And who are the children of immigrants within higher education? And last but not least, you and we, I should say we, not you or I, we are all at the forefront of really creating awareness and promoting more discussion, which is truly what Naveen and I try to do within our environments here, centered around the resources and the support systems. Because when we went out looking for information, there's little, and there's a lot of, there's little and a lot, there's gaps. So we are at the forefront of that, of helping to be that bridge for our students. Yeah. As I go through the learning objectives here, I definitely would like to know in the chat, what do you hope to get or expect? What do you expect from this session? and we are looking.
Yes, I'm interested to see if you're, if even if you don't have an expectation, if you learn anything from this session. Because I learned a lot while I was doing some of the research. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how drastic some of this research was. And like Michelle said, a lot of this is coming, this is newer. Especially with the first gen immigrant perspective. The research is coming out more now because of how much you're seeing more of the identity popping up. So it's very interesting to see it.
I did not catch anything in the chat. Maybe we got really quiet. We're very excited for the possibilities of everything. Well, then, hey, we can
can go.
conquer this. We can totally conquer this.
Yes.
So with that in mind, we're going to take this off first for what are the obstacles, Naveen?
Well, hey, so one thing I wanted to look at before we dive into just the immigrant perspective, let's look at first gen students as a whole. What are obstacles we're seeing today with, in general, first gen students? So this I got from actual research study where they compared first gen students to to traditional students. And these, what I found right here were the top options where they said first gen students actually had difficulty with it. The first one we see is competing job responsibilities. So what that means is a lot of first gen students are trying to find job internships finding jobs or internships and determining can they afford doing both or do they have to do something unpaid? And that is sometimes can be a little bit problematic when they're figuring out what they want to do. Another thing is competing family responsibilities. So being a first gen, you're also, sometimes you have your own family challenges that you have to take care of. You have siblings if you're the eldest. So they found a lot of more responsibility on them, understanding on what to do. Weak English and math skills. Just understanding the language, and especially if you don't have a parent who has higher ed education, it could be a little bit challenging to take those classes. You don't have the support to help you, and you also don't have the ability to be like, oh wait, they've read that book, or no, they haven't, and they don't read at the same level. Inadequate study skills. So this is a very popular one, and it also relates to poor study behaviors. So when you are growing up and you don't have anyone to show you, hey, this is how you study for a test, and most first gen students come from counting on the environment they're coming from, you're usually not shown how to in high school. High school is really just a little foreground, but you're not getting in depth on how you should study for big tests. So they end up struggling when they go to college. That's why you'll see that a lot with students who are first gen. They don't know how to study, or they're struggling to create good habits of studying. Usually a bad study environment. So this relates to, if you have siblings or your family's working all the time or counting on what you're having at home. A lot of most first gen students, they're having a lot of things at home. So it can cause noises. They don't have a safe place maybe at home. They're dealing with the regular, there's nowhere to study. They don't have internet maybe. There's a lot of different perspectives that can cause not a great environment for them. And then of course, there's the mental health aspect. They're feeling depressed, stressed, or upset, which is very expected when you're having all these other challenges that you have to worry about. And then of course, there's sometimes a physical illness or condition where it could either be from them that they're having these, or it could be from a parent or guardian and they're helping, take care, or that's something they have to worry about as well. But these are just the in general obstacles that they are seeing a higher rate, higher obstacles for first gen students.
I want to also focus on when you specifically spoke about the English and math skills. If you think about the number one way our students translate it is communicate is through language. And a lot of times we see a lot of our students being the translators for that family. And they themselves are struggling. So the impact that goes along with that is twofold. We have a huge international student population here of families that they just, what Alejandra said this morning, being that first and only, who don't understand, who've seen pictures of a campus, who come here for the first time and simply don't grasp the experience and the obstacles that we unfortunately place for that to just be harder for them to transition. When I think of family responsibilities, I always think about, the unity aspect of many immigrant families and how they move to this country as a as a nucleus, as a
Mhm.
system. And therefore, they're all within the same environment. And when you spoke about the study and not being able to have a normal study environment, is because I think here in colleges and universities, we expect that to be quiet. And in a library, where that will look completely different. If you have 5
Mhm.
siblings, I had my grandmother, my grandfather, my
Yeah.
cousins, and when we all came, it's a group of 12 is a small group. That's nothing. That means my cousins didn't make it. So it's just a matter of truly we're trying to set the scene.
Mhm.
So you understand some, not all of those factors that truly are obstacles for first-gen students. Now, I did want to ask a question. If you can, please use the option in chat. And yes, you're getting points for this somewhere out there in Hoover world. Which ones do you see most prevalently in your place of employment regarding obstacles? And if they're not there on the slide that we have shown you, which ones have we missed? What are some obstacles?
Mhm.
Because we would love to note those and mention them. And you can also unmute yourselves. Trust me, we do not want to be the only one speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and Jamie said a lot of my first gen students have family responsibilities.
Mhm.
Absolutely. They're the caretaker. They're the one who's translating. A lot of times, a lot of our international students have a lot of fiscal and financial
Yes.
responsibilities to keep the books because of their
Mhm.
English skills. Competing responsibilities. Our students are pulled in different directions. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
And it's hard to prioritize academics. Exactly. We always say academics first, but when I don't have a sustainable place and environment back at home, it's hard to balance those. Do you want to read some?
Yeah. Lauren said the same as Mark. What did he? Yeah.
Mark said job responsibilities, pretty
Yeah.
major for some students. Absolutely, Mark.
Tara said parents not understanding time needed to focus on school. That's a huge one. I've definitely seen that where a lot of parents don't understand the grasp or the depth that these students are facing, and they think students can just do it. And especially if they've never been in that same situation, they really do struggle. Or they want to pull the child out and be like,
Mhm.
hey, work more, we need more money, we need financial. So that is a huge one I see too.
For over 20 years, I worked at a boarding school where this was a prevalent issue, where they did not understand, although the families put their students there
Mhm.
to focus on education. When the pandemic came, for example, in
Oh, yeah.
2020, they had to prioritize work over studies.
Mhm.
So seeing that shift on where, and they said it this morning, I think it was one of the comments that was made, you start parenting your parents. So our first gen students, and I completely can start
Mhm.
parenting your parent into
Yes.
best practices and what to do. And it's a shift therefore.
Mhm.
Basic services terms at a college, like what is a bursar? You're
Oh
absolutely
my
right,
God, yeah.
Julie, that I did not understand that. And I remember the first friend that my mother made was the Spanish speaking. She just retired from Penn State, the Spanish speaking attendant at the bursar's office at Penn State, because it was the connection that she had. And it was remarkable. Mark also mentioned writing.
Oh, yes. That is a huge one, especially if you've never written it, or so I find sometimes it also depends on where you came from in high school, what setting, what state you're coming from, plays a huge role. That background on you, how you are going to be taught in your higher ed. So if you come from a lower income high school and you're expected now to write these papers, you're going to struggle. And I see that with a lot of different students. I know I saw that even just when I was an undergrad. I saw a lot of us struggling to write certain papers because we come from different areas and you have no one to really help sometimes.
Absolutely. I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to with a parent that sends you. I know my mom and my dad send me constant communications. Can you please check this? Can you please check
Oh my
the
God,
grammar?
yes.
Because you, as a first gen, and this is not specific to me, but to many others, as a first gen student, you become that stability, although
Mhm.
you yourself are the one at the forefront.
Yep.
Julie said, in my college, a colleague created a first gen program, and part of the seminar includes a day discussing a glossary of terms about university life and what each resource means and how to access it.
That is
Wow.
that's awesome.
Yes, Julie.
Oh my God. I had some students I was asking about being a first gen, and that is something they wish they had like more understanding of some of these terms. So that's really great that you do that.
Julie, I really want to continue that conversation offline because we have a group of students here who want to be at the forefront of that. So thank you. This is what this talk is all about. I
Yes.
appreciate you all being honest with that. We're going to go to the second slide here, not the second. So who is first gen immigrant student?
Yes. So I wanted to look at more of the research, and I wanted to see some statistics because I'm all about numbers because I feel like it puts more in perspective of what we're actually seeing. So I looked at the higher ed, and we're very lucky these have just been updated. So I was like, okay, great. We're seeing recent research. So fun fact, they say 1 in every 4 students is a first gen at Penn State. So this is just the Penn State campuses. That's what they see. In all of colleges, 1/3 of all college students are first gen. That's a huge portion if you think about it. That is 33% about of all students are first gen in the college. I find that very astonishing. In 2021, 30% of admitted college students are children of immigrants. That number is slowly rising. They say currently children of immigrants, they're seeing them go higher and higher. They're starting to be the highest increase in the college setting right now. So that's just, and they had a huge shift from, I think the last one was 2018, and the previous years, I think it was even like 7% less than that. So like I said, they are the fastest growing rate of college students. They're 80% of domestic enrollment currently. It's also part of the most diverse group of students. So when you're looking at first-gen immigrant students, you're seeing different groups. Currently, they say, based off the 2021 research, 88% of your Asian students are first-gen children of immigrants. 68% are from the Latina students, 28% of Black students, and 10% of white students. Those were shocking numbers. I did not expect those were the numbers when I was looking at it. And with that in mind, they said California, from all the states, accounts for 54% of the immigrant origin students. They do have, I think, New York, Texas, and possibly New Jersey are the states that are following California. But I was shocked to see California was the top one, where they were seeing students come from. But I found that all very interesting when I was looking at it. What are your thoughts? Do any of these numbers astonish you, or you're like, oh wait, I expected that? Let us know. I would love to hear what you thought, because I definitely was not expecting some of those numbers.
Lauren Dins, and again, I don't want to put any of you on the spot, but feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share it. Lauren Dins here at Penn State Harrisburg said we're close to that, to a third here at Penn State Harrisburg. And Nicole Howell, over 41% of students at Penn State Lehigh Valley are
Wow.
first gen. So something definitely that we need to be taking into consideration. Any of those numbers surprise you? Or you're in the state, you're like, nope, I'm pretty well aware. That's why I'm here today.
I think for me, having the 41% at Penn State Lehigh Valley just raises more questions because it's such a significant portion of our population. We have the Tri Alpha Honor Society here, but even that, we have 100 students eligible, but only 20 actually filled out the application. So how do we, and that's part of that first generation trait, right? Because they just, they either don't answer the emails, or they just don't know about it and they're afraid to ask. So part of the challenge in those numbers is just how do we continue to improve our services for them to so that we can support them better.
That was a big topic, and it's still a topic of conversation here. We have the first gen celebration. So at Penn State Harrisburg, it's sort of, it ignites that interest, but it's really having, and we've talked about it, either a student org or student ambassadors, because students really need to be at the forefront of this movement in order for other students to understand. We had a great student, I'll call him because he's amazing, Juan Serrano, which is, I don't know if Anissa is here, but he came from Penn State Abington, and they have a great support system there, who truly wants to be at the forefront of being a student leader, who gets other students together so they know that they're not alone. And he starts first by defining first gen, which a lot of our students, don't even know they're first gen, don't understand that, that is a qualifier and an identifier that sets them apart, but can also be a good way to find a bridge of support. So I do implore, and that's still a process right now. I'm talking to myself as I'm saying it. It's still a work in progress here at Penn State Harrisburg, because we truly want our students to be ambassadors and leaders for that connection in order to bridge and educate others.
Yeah.
And Julia, I definitely like going back to those support systems and resources. That's huge.
That is so big.
If we can provide that for our students right away. I know Cindy Daniels is like the legacy leader of all things that we can provide here at Penn State Harrisburg for our students that will help to support them. We want to do more of that. That was a big, I absolutely revere that woman. But anyway, side note.
We
So,
do have a couple more comments in the chat
yes.
from Mark and Lauren.
Oh, mine didn't update.
I know it takes a
But it-
second. I think there it is.
This number from California, I'm gonna go back to Mark.
Yeah.
This is from Mark. This number from California makes sense given how big the state is, 39 million people. And especially as I don't do well with
Is that San
acronyms.
Francisco?
San Francisco, yeah, my English is my second language. A Center for Asian Immigration and LA for all kinds of immigration, a huge Cambodian community. Thank you for pointing that
Yeah,
out.
that is true. I didn't even think of that.
Lauren's comment, do you want to say
Yeah,
that?
so Lauren said the awareness that is even a thing, also breaking down those stigmas about what that means, eliminating the feeling of otherness that can come with that. Yes.
You're absolutely right. And it is the fear. We have a group of students who embraces it and a group of students who's scared to. So really teaching to what that can mean is a very big and important point. Thank you, Lauren.
Mark's comment, he's interested in the first gen numbers at UP are for change of campus and transfer students. Any idea of this? We started working more intentionally to support change of campus students in the HDFS department at UP. I'm also interested in this. I was trying to find the UP statistics on the first gen immigrant students just in general. I wasn't finding anything. I don't know if anyone knows where to find that. But I couldn't find stuff on my behalf, but I would love to know the numbers.
That is a great question for us to keep and also maybe talk to our transition programs and advising. Daniel, I know you're here somewhere. Maybe you're not paying attention. No, but maybe advising could help us grab a hold of those numbers, especially with our transfer students. That's a population of students that we tend to miss in the January whenever it happens. So and Eileen said you might be able to get that information from your institutional research folks.
Yeah.
We don't have one right now.
That's Nicole also said there is a hidden issue with honor societies. If you enter one, your family's expectations for your academic and work success skyrocket. Struggling with even one class or needing to cut back on work hours to focus on studying becomes a failure in the eyes of family, and that can sink your success as a student. A lot of first-gen students see honor society as a trap to avoid. Yes.
We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
It's the family first.
I definitely hear the family I just did a presentation, and I remember a few of the students were talking about how much they have the family expectations that weigh in on them and how much they're trying to change it and how hard it is. So yes.
And they would leave college in a heartbeat if it meant that they had to take care of their family first, as they don't see where is it our responsibility to really teach them the value of that education or balancing it out as, as we truly try to empower them rather.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a loaded one and such a true one. Any other comments? The data digest shows UP's first gen number is 7,000. Thank you, Hillary. 7,322 full-time from fall 2023.
That's a huge number.
Data Digest. Thank you so much. Wow. Well, great.
Yeah.
We can go on to the next one. So,
Yeah, I think
Yes.
we're on
Oh,
the
we are on
challenge.
this. We are on this. We are on the challenges one. So as we have outlined here, these are some of the challenges that we thought surfaced from the conversations that we had, from the
Mhm.
information that we looked at. But again, we want you to, and we've already had them in the conversation. Code switching is truly how that student has to go from one norm to another.
Mhm.
I know code switching in language,
Yep.
code switching in culture, and behavior. And it's that struggle between the two that the students go through, as we discussed in family
Mhm.
responsibilities, as we discussed in studying, study areas, like what that prioritization looks like, which takes us to time management. Just like we had a discussion right now, their priorities are going to be shifted differently. As your traditional student might come into a university setting and say, I am all academics or not, I am
Mhm.
all academics or not, but their time management skills might prioritize more family, might prioritize more of the language barrier or the deficit
Mhm.
in a skill that they might need to truly be successful. As mentioned, life responsibilities, from having to direct financially
Mhm.
to be sometimes ahead of a group for others, or a leader. There's a lot of responsibility that is put in a first gen student, especially when they are a child of an immigrant. And I see it sometimes, and it's like a golden key, and there's so much pressure on them. It's heartbreaking. It's admirable and heartbreaking at the same time, because you see their desire to do everything,
Mhm.
but have a need to balance it. Cultural expectations vary, and they vary across, they're very varied. We see it very prevalent here at Penn State Harrisburg, because we have such a large amount of international students. I don't know if Charles is on, but maybe he can point. I think we're up to 800 or 900
Yeah,
international students.
last time I checked, I remember seeing around 850 maybe, or even,
Yes.
and it's going up more and more.
So as cultural expectations vary, that impacts a student, impacts their connections. A lot of times where we see it in the academic realm, the connection with the professor,
Mhm.
the communications that they have with them, their expectations. There needs to be what I find to be a happy medium between that student. But that comes with learning, and something, again, that I think offering those resources and explaining them better. I think here, I love that you put this on, Glory. Adjusting to a new diet, food choices for some international students are limited. We have huge discussions on that here.
Mhm.
Between halal foods and vegetarian, and especially offering special options for our students, Eid coming to cultural celebrations, like it's a huge limitation, and sometimes and a huge boundary too, because it's difficult, at least for students. I know at University Park, there's a lot of marketplaces that students can walk to. But also here they need travel to
Yeah.
find somewhere where they can actually find it, because they cannot find it here on campus. Melissa said they may have to stay home to translate, as
Yes.
those at home cannot interact with workers that are coming into their home, or go to the doctor with them to translate.
Yep.
We have a lot of students that have to stay back and babysit, stay
Mhm.
home, or go to that doctor appointment. I've had those one-on-one instances, and we see them. So again, those are pulling at the core of what is a priority when you're trying to be a first gen student and a child of an immigrant. And unfortunately, but reality is discrimination. Our students face this every day, all the time. And, as somebody who has to be at the forefront of bias reports, it's really, we're still at a
Mhm.
point where we really need to educate others on what it really means to be cultural aware and culturally sensitive, to listen and take the time to understand other cultures. So that's something our students, unfortunately, our first gen students see a lot. Did we
Michelle,
miss it?
There was
Yes.
also, Eileen also added a question. How do you work with students whose family expectations are they become a doctor, but maybe they're not doing so well in sciences? And we may see this in other majors as well, right? That
Mhm.
maybe the student is not on the career path that they want to be on, but again, they're trying to live up to those family expectations.
Well, yeah, I had a similar situation, a
Yeah.
student one who came here, Penn State Harrisburg is a lot of focus on engineering. So we have a lot of students that come here specifically for engineering, and the moment that they get here, they're like, it's not
It's not
me.
it.
Um, it's very hard, and I don't think
Mhm.
by no means I'm an expert. The conversations that I have are more of helping that student understand how they can have more communication if communication is open, because some families, Emily, unfortunately, like they just won't allow for that. They're like,
Yep.
you must finish and complete this. So I think as a resource with and respecting, this is the big, my grandmother is speaking to me, like, and respecting a culture and what it stands for is helping the student to understand self-worth and providing a balance. Because I know, unfortunately, some of our students, for our international students, if parents are paying for their education, they will say, we're paying for your education, you're expected to do blank. But it's really, I think it's self-worth and confidence and understanding a mutual ground. I don't have a concrete answer, but maybe
I was
Nadine can
gonna
have it
say,
help.
no, this is a very popular topic. I see this within my own community. I see this within a lot of our students, our international students. The one tip I usually, Michelle said it right, having that communication, but also an understanding themselves. I agree with everything. The one thing I also tell students sometimes is, and this is something we had to learn, me, my friends, and a lot of us, is also doing something you love. But I understand that sometimes it is a struggle with, especially international students, when their parents are paying and financing for them to come here for that specific major. It can be a little bit overwhelming, and especially if you're struggling in that major. But I always try to say, my one tip is like, take a class that you want to take with it. That was my one tip always to certain students. I'm like, what is something that's a requirement? Because you always have those gen eds that you have to take. And I'm like, take something that you want for yourself and do that also. Or if you have the ability, do a club or do something that's for you. You are here for yourself as well, and understanding that, this isn't just them, it is you as well. So it's a lot to it. But obviously we're not experts at this. And it's something I will say, it is something we're still seeing nowadays. People don't think it's as prevalent. It is very prevalent with a lot of students. But I do think there's a lot more topics now with parents and making the parents understand a little bit of like, there's a lot more to it to being a student in a university. And I think that's where it is, where the parents sometimes don't understand. And that's what the whole first gen experience is. They don't understand the depth of what the student is going through. And they think like you could do it if someone else can, or they just put it all on that student.
Identifying those resources too
Mhm.
at an early stage if the parent or support
Yes.
system to our children of immigrants are involved is really explaining that through even the new student orientation process and really it falls back on us as student
Mhm.
affairs professional. What are we doing to best educate not only that student of what the support system is, but what's available for the parent? I know those are the biggest questions that we get during new student orientation, is trying to also educate not only that student, but educate their support system, and their support system might not be family.
Yep.
And it looks different. So getting to that common ground is important.
I was,
Eileen wrote here. Yep. You want to read Eileen's?
at the bottom. It
Mhm.
reminds me of the work that you Hawaii.
University of Hawaii.
I was like, wait.
We translate for each other.
Did with certificate programs to address student interests who, while also addressing the family requirement for specific majors. This was the Mormon students. Yeah.
Eileen, I would be really interested to know about that too, because it's very significant. And I
Mhm.
think for those families who are involved, we have everything. We have the student who came here and did the did everything on their own. But we
Yeah.
have the students who really have that family and other support. What does that look like? But I truly think it takes a village, and that's
Mhm.
why we're here today.
Looking at where my role is, as I work in career services too with part of my job. And one thing I always tell students, the major that you're in doesn't define everything. And I try to show them that there's options for you. So even if you have a pre-med track, or if you're doing biology major, you don't have to go just to medical school. There's actually more option. And I think that's in the educating and teaching them. Sometimes it's not, a lot of students think it's closed-minded, where it's like, oh, if I do this, I have to become this. But that's not really the reality, and showing them there is doors for them. So that's just another part I wanted to add.
No, I definitely believe that. I think I say I'm 47 years old and I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Mhm.
We all understanding that process for our first gen students, specifically as they change, as they
Mhm.
are faced with being the child of an immigrant, is one that if we all have it more present as we move forward, we will be able to make that difference. And understanding that, yes, at 19 years old, did you really know what you wanted to do? If you do, that's amazing.
Yeah,
But if not, let's help support them through that process.
agreed.
Do you want to speak about the student?
Yes. So I wanted to get some student feedback. I wanted to hear a little bit more. I always ask students, in general, just to hear what they say. So I got two student quotes. They are anonymous because they didn't want me to share their info, but both of them are fourth year students here. They're an undergraduate. So the first quote was, "I wish there was an easier way to find resources. I have struggled to find things on my own. I had to learn to depend on myself and other students to help me when in need. I now know to ask for help and not allow my own perceptions hinder me." The one thing that student was telling me was that they felt like they were scared to ask for help. They were scared people were going to tell them, like, shouldn't you have known that? Why don't you know that? And sometimes students don't just want to say, well, I'm a first gen, or they don't understand that that's sometimes what ends up happening when you are a first gen. So you depend on your friends and people you're familiar with, instead of people who you should ask. But that's what they were telling me. And then the second student said, "I struggled understanding different apps the university used. Not only that, but figuring out housing was extremely difficult for me. My parents could not help me when making those decisions." So this second student, they immigrated here later in life, so their parents don't speak English that very well. So they are dependent to do everything. They're the ones who are selecting where they're going to go for housing. They're the ones who are reading the contracts. They're the ones who end up, let's be honest, they're going to probably fill out their FAFSA asking their parents because they don't know what they're doing, which is very difficult. But they were really saying housing was the most difficult thing. The Cork app, Engage app, they said it didn't matter how much sometimes people talked about it. It took so much time for them to physically use those apps because they never had them before. And learning to understand, even what do they use the students? Is this is it Canvas? Or what's the one? Canva. When they use Canva, that was another struggle that they were struggling with when they were using those apps.
We try to facilitate things for our students, all
Mhm.
students, to facilitate, and it's at times a barrier. Oh, don't worry, we have a system for that. Oh, don't worry, we
Mhm.
have a system for that. There's so many different systems. The more we can be at the forefront of educating our students and simplifying or eliminating those barriers, and we're moving in the right direction, specifically with our first gen students.
Mhm.
I know that that is still a goal for our new student orientation. The moment that we have our students for the first time, get them to understand what is the language that they speak at
Mhm.
Penn State University, but University Park. What is the language that they speak at Penn State York? How can we simplify it so that when they're also playing translator, or not just because it's a different language, but communicating with their families, their or support systems, they're able to share out that information in a succinct way. Our students definitely, I know that housing, think about it. And how does the college university experience look differently for those in other parts of the world, and those specifically who've never had it? The idea of thousands of
Mhm.
people living in the same place where a parent who's never been here. I know my mom was like, "What? You have
Mhm.
1,000 people in a dorm? What? Oh, one building." So it's just helping to create that bridge that sometimes might seem like a barrier. Do we have,
I know Michelle did ask in a chat, what do students in your area share? So like tell us a little bit about what do you see? Like are students telling you what are some quotes you hear a lot? And then Lauren did say, so true, my parents were and still are so skeptical of even sharing financial info. That is so
Absolutely.
real. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. They do not want to share any information that is personal to them. They're afraid that something's going to happen. I mean, they've been able to succeed, and the fear of
Mhm.
failing is FAFSA. I mean,
Oh yeah.
what? I'm still
That
trying to figure out my kids. Like thank goodness he's independent.
and they just updated FAFSA, so it's even another challenge for parents who or the children who are seeing the new way and how it was already having problems this year. I know that was a struggle. I, I had a few students telling me they didn't even know how to do it. I was trying to show them like this is where you could look up for help because even I didn't know. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't even know how to help in that aspect.
But as we try to help, good
Yes.
segue. I mean, we're going over to our last side here before we get into questions. And this is really where we would appreciate your feedback in the chat for us. How to help. What does it really mean to become an advocate, to become an ally? It's that education, it's that fostering communication, and it's bridging the gap. Have patience. If one thing, we know probably the people in the room were preaching to the choir and saying that you're probably at the forefront, but being those educators for your colleagues, for your partners is a big part of helping to create more awareness, understanding, and collaboration. Never expect that students know things. I always say this to my peers, even my students themselves. How can I know somebody taught you that? How can we know? We say, but they should know. No, let me teach you. In a succinct manner that doesn't seem condescending, that empowers you, so you can therefore do it to somebody else. We want to create legacy, that leadership. And do not assume that one thing that worked for one student will work with everyone. We do know that. Sometimes it's just a matter of reminding ourselves, truly, because in dealing with first gen, specifically immigrants, this impacts culture, this impacts language, this impacts behavior. And we're talking about individuals that are all different. So truly being patient as you walk through this path is really a key. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, you're good. I was gonna add, also remembering, sometimes if you are capable, being at the same level with the student, talking to them and like having typical conversations, becoming a person that they want to talk to, being that open-minded where students feel comfortable asking you. Because sometimes if you're not able to, or students don't feel that connection, or they don't, they might be scared to go up to you to ask you anything. So being able to have that open door of capable, that really helps to show, like, I remember we have stickers you put on your doors, like say first gen advocate or a first gen, student myself. I know students when they see that, they love that on my door because then they'll come in and ask me something. They find that there's familiarity between us, which really helps as we're working on stuff.
I wanted to point out, oh, Nicole Howell, I was gonna actually read what you read, but do you want to read it?
Sure. Actually, I was going to give everybody, we have about 5 minutes left, and I know you want to leave time for questions. I was just saying that the most common statement I hear from students, especially the students of immigrants and our first gen students, is that my parents just don't understand. They want to prioritize their academics, but it's very difficult for them to communicate to their parents how important that is to them because they're working at their parents' restaurant, they're taking care of younger siblings. Again, they're just trying to juggle all of those responsibilities they have. So they're really torn on how to communicate their needs ahead of what their parents' expectations are.
Yeah.
And I've had that question too, and I say they won't. They won't. So helping them they're a different generation, they're a different culture, they might speak a different language, they might have different norms. And, it's really coming to a patient understanding, which is hard for young adults in college or university age. But I start with, they won't. Like I think every system is different, but it's hard to live in somebody else's experience.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yes. And then Karen said, children of immigrants may not understand what we consider common culture experiences. It's not just how college works. Their home life can be very diverse and include much of their parents' home culture. No, that's exactly it. You know, what they have at home, that culture, counting on where they come from, really does impact everything. And they don't understand. They don't understand a lot of the grasp of the college life. And everyone's different too, because every college experience is different. And counting on where you go, it really plays a role.
Absolutely. I would love to hear somebody's voice if somebody has a voice out there. But if not, I'll take the chat. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
And I apologize. I just saw my Zoom name just says my name and I
It's
completely
okay.
missed my amazing host here, Naveen.
We're good. We're here together.
Partner. Let me look at the chat.
I'm not seeing anything unless it's delayed.
Well,
If they don't have questions.
oh, then we have questions for you. How many minutes do we have? 3? I did want to put in the chat. I'm going to put my email address. If you are interested, we
Yes.
would love to share with you some Proud First Gen stickers that we have here for our students so that you show your advocacy. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Feel free to send us a message. I know that we're going to get feedback forms. We always want to learn and grow from this experience and be able to provide more information. So by all means, put that there. Do you want to ask them a question in the 2 minutes that we have, ma'am?
Yes. Can we?
Oh,
Hey,
yes.
we could go over. I had just a few questions up, but like obviously we don't have enough time for them all. But I did want to ask, if you identify with this group of students, what do you wish someone had told you?
Oh, we have something in the chat.
Do we? Julie said, I want to connect more with first-gen students and or URM students. I want to lend an empathetic ear, even if I don't fully understand the experience. How can I provide a way to make students comfortable to share when I may not look like them? That's a really good question. I think, you attending a session like this, having the different, where we educate ourselves and understand different perspectives, plays a huge role. Putting in that you're an advocate for the students, letting them be aware, like, I'm here to support you, really does help.
And just
But-
because it don't create a connection because you don't look like them or might have the same background, doesn't mean that they don't want to be heard and seen.
Exactly.
So I would completely go back to that and if able, provide a space for
Yes.
them to have that, to be heard and seen. Because it really, truly, we could be green or blue and white, I should say here for Penn State. It does not, yes, of course, there's a lot of studies on peer mentors for first gen students with the same cultural background and their success. Yet our students want to be seen and heard. What are we doing to listen and to provide that space for them?
Exactly. Sometimes students just want to talk to anyone. As long as you're able to give them that feeling of being able to talk to, that's all they want.
Absolutely. It's tough to do in short advising meetings.
But I want to do better and create a safe space.
And that takes time.
It does.
It does take time. Being an ally, being a supporter, sometimes we can't be at the forefront of it. And sometimes students just need to find it in other students as well. And it's taking time, it's being patient, and it's knowing that it's a journey. It's not a one and done. Oh, we're getting the next session is starting soon.
I'm like,
I feel like we're in the Emmys and they're gonna shut down the music and they're gonna take us off.
Michelle and Naveen, thank you so much for offering this session for us today. I think it provided a great reminder. And even Julie, like sometimes it's just starting with those short, small meetings, just starting that relationship and then growing it from there. Just again, as Michelle and Naveen mentioned, just to be a resource and support for our first gen students and our children of immigrants. Just a quick reminder, you could rate this session. Don't forget to also fill out the survey today at the end of our summit. And I just want to pitch another reminder. I put it in the chat, but please remember you can also participate in the community section in Whova. There's there's different areas. There's a resource fair, program fair. There's the icebreaker if you haven't introduced yourself yet. I was saying earlier that I have a little competition, I think, going right now with my colleagues in my office competing on this leaderboard. You rack up points for participating in that community section. So jump in and participate as the day continues. So again, Michelle, Naveen, thank you. And thank you everybody for attending. Have a good lunch.
Have a wonderful day,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you.